thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our topic today. So we're going to first, I first want to thank y'all for submitting. People kind of submitted their favorite children's books. So we had quite a few, we had a big variety. So everything from The Little Prince to Winnie the Pooh, Goodnight Moon, Junie B. Jones, the BFG, Harry Potter, all of it. So we had quite a few. So if y'all think of your favorite, if anyone else, has a favorite children's book that they want to put into the chat, please do. I think everyone has one that is near and dear to your heart. So feel free to converse in that way and let us know your favorite children's book. So today we're going to talk about some classic children's stories and books that I think y'all probably will know of, definitely know of. So these are some of they may not be your favorites, but they're going to be some that you recognize. We're going to start off with fairy tales. I think we're all pretty familiar with fairy tales. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the Bentley Rare Book Museum's copies of our 1834 edition of the Grimm's fairy tale. So I'm going to give you a little look. I have it right here with me. It's a 2-volume set. So we've got 2 of them here, and they really are beautiful. Excuse me, I'm just going to admit a couple more folks. Leather bound, really pretty spines. So we're going to be talking a little bit talking about a couple stories from these today. They're gilt on all edges. So someone really loved these books. They were taken care of, and now they're with us. So I was going to have Mr. Williams provide a little bit of background on fairy tales, but since he's not here, I think I can do a little. I know a little bit. But one misconception I think that most people have is really that they're for children. And fairy tales were not, as many of us know, were not explicitly told or written for children originally. Children may have been in the audience, which when you hear the contents of some of them may surprise you, but they originally were not. They were really part of an oral tradition. And until around the late Middle Ages, when the advent of printing, came about, and then they began to be printed. And so one thing that I find interesting about our specific copy of these Grimm's fairy tales, which y'all may have heard of, these were originally, this edition is from 1834, but the Grimm brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, originally published these in 1812. And so when I was reading the preface to this edition, I noticed that the translators who translated it into English, they said that they left out some things that they felt that may not have been appropriate for young audiences. And so I thought that was interesting, that this isn't even the exact translation of what the Grimm brothers put in. So there are a lot of variations. These stories have been retold and reimagined many, many times, which keeps them alive. And I think a lot of us, definitely, I know for my age, Disney did a lot of the reimagining and for me. And so that's something that we're going to get into today. All right, so I'm trying something new, and thank y'all so much for putting in more of your favorite children's books in the chat. This is really, really cool to see. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to try something new. I hope it doesn't go horribly, but I have a poll that I want to see if we can launch and do. So anyway, I've never done this, so we'll try. Okay, I'm going to launch it now. Okay. So I think you can y'all see, can y'all participate? Okay, so let's see.
Was the most impactful for me personally, or like?
Yeah, just in your opinion. Yeah, for you or for Youth Think Society, whatever you think. Either one. Okay. Just a couple more seconds. I think we're almost everybody voted. If you don't want to vote, you don't have to. It's just for fun. Okay. Did everyone get a chance to vote who wanted to vote? You did? Okay. Okay, we end polling. Ah. All right. Let's share results. Okay. Sleeping Beauty got no love. Not bad. So this is fascinating. So we are almost kind of half and half, but Cinderella kind of takes the cake a little bit. All right, so that's kind of what I thought maybe. The reason why I had you kind of look at those three, those were the early, they're called first generation Disney princesses. And, you know, we can kind of tell sometimes that they are. Cinderella or Snow White being the first in 1937, Cinderella 1950, and then Sleeping Beauty 1959. So we're going to start by talking about Cinderella since she won a little bit by very small margins, but she did win. So Cinderella is featured in volume 2 of our Grimm's Fairy Tales in here, and she's called Ashputtel, not Cinderella. So the earliest Cinderella type stories really date back to, like, even some say ancient Greece, but many people kind of have decided that really the first Cinderella type story was in China in the 9th century. And the earliest European tale was told by Giambattista Basile in 1634. So I don't know if anyone knows about Basile's story, but in this one, Cinderella's mother had died and her father had remarried. But then Cinderella's governess, so like her nanny or her teacher, convinced her to break her stepmother's neck with the lid of a trunk. So she did, and then the governess married her dad, and then she just banished Cinderella to the kitchen. So that's how that one kind of starts off. So now I'm going to read excerpts from the Grimms. It does not start off that way. So I'm going to read a little bit from that. I think that the beginning of this one, y'all, it'll be a little more familiar. It's not going to be as creepy. So here's how the Grimms one begins. It does not have the snapping of the neck and everything. Ashputtel. The wife of a rich man fell sick, and when she felt that her end drew nigh, she called her only daughter to her bedside and said, "Always be a good girl, and I will look down from heaven and watch over you." Soon afterwards, she shut her eyes and died, and was buried in the garden. And the little girl went every day to her grave and wept, and was always good and kind to all about her. And the snow spread a beautiful white covering over the grave. But by the time the sun had melted it away again, her father had married another wife. This new wife had 2 daughters of her own that she brought home with her. They were fair in face, but foul at heart. And it was now a sorry time for the poor little girl. "What does the good-for-nothing thing want in the parlor?" said they. "They who would eat bread should first earn it. Away with the kitchen maid." Then they took away her fine clothes and gave her an old gray frock to put on, and laughed at her and turned her into the kitchen. So I think that's kind of how more of us know of how the story kind of begins. In the Grimm's version, there's also no fairy godmother. And I've noticed that at one point, the stepmother actually calls Ashputtel or Cinderella a slut, which I didn't know that they used that term in 1834, but I suppose they did. And then, as some of y'all may know, there's some violence a little bit with regards to the slipper. And I find that to be a little, we kind of know about this, but basically when one of the sisters wants desperately to fit into the slipper, which is not a glass slipper, it's a gold slipper in the Grimm's version, one of the sisters cuts off her big toe. And then the prince sees that she's bleeding everywhere and is like, you're not my bride. Then the next sister, I think she does something to her heel. I think she like cuts her heel or something, and then she's bleeding everywhere. And he's like, well, you're not my bride. So there are a couple gory aspects to this one, but it's not as disturbing as Bazille's. Now, the Disney version that from 1950 that many of us have seen before, that one is based on Charles Perrault's 1697 adaptation. And so Perrault introduced the magical elements, and he's the one that kind of gave us, and the glass slipper, and he's the one that kind of gave us the more the version of Cinderella that we're more used to. So that's a little bit about Cinderella. Now, Snow White, I noticed that for those of you who picked Snow White, I just have to ask, anybody who picked Snow White, what was it about that one that you think was important? Just any opinion, anyone that hasn't, and you can put in the chat if you want.
For me,
yeah.
For me, it wasn't important. Again, I was talking to Chad about it scared me. I mean, Disney's witches, in whichever movie, the evil characters can be very, very scary for children. And so that really impressed me as being a terrifying movie.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. So yeah, maybe not exactly. That was something significant about that film. And you're right, it was really, really scary. The good thing about the Disney version, even though it was really scary, it was still a little bit more sugar-coated. I think in Bazille's version, I think what was worse, the bad part is that it was Snow White's actual mother. So she wanted to kill her daughter because she was so jealous of her. So I think that that was a little bit, it's more sinister there. And I think in our Grimm's fairy tales, her name is Snowdrop, not Snow White. And so I think that honestly, I do think the Disney film in 1937, I like how Tamara mentioned that it is scary. I think that one is pretty closely based on, from what I can tell, on the Grimm's tale. They don't edit a whole lot. It is quite scary. Now, something that I would like to see if y'all have heard of, and I'm going to see if y'all can see, has anyone heard of Rose Red before? Rose Red. So I found in the Bentley, we have this tall book of fairy tales. So some of us have heard of Rose Red, some not. We have this tall book of fairy tales from the 1940s. And it has this image here of Snow White and Rose Red. And this is a really different story than I'm used to. This one kind of it was very different. Rose Red and Snow White are sisters. And I think there's an evil dwarf. So there's one dwarf and he's really, really mean. And he keeps trying to bother them. And then there's a bear that protects them, but the bear ends up turning into a prince that Snow White marries. And then he has a brother who's a prince that Rose Red marries. So I had never heard that rendition before, but that's another one that I found in our collections too. So I noticed that our last little fairy tale we're going to talk about is Sleeping Beauty or Rosebud. In the Grimm's fairy tales, it's called Rosebud. I noticed no one put Sleeping Beauty as, particularly impactful or maybe noteworthy. She does have quite a passive role because she's asleep for big part of the movie at least. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of Sun Moon Talia. That is from Giambattista Basille's version in the 1634. So sorry, I'm going to say a couple of very disturbing things, but the way that one was, it was, what Sleeping Beauty is now based on. But basically, so Sleeping Beauty was, or Talia was cursed with, from the witch or whatnot. But then, so she, touched the spindle and she fell asleep. And I see that Danny mentioned she's only on screen for 17 minutes of the movie. Yeah, so that is quite interesting. So in this story, in Basile's story, same thing, she fell asleep. But anyway, a king who's married comes and finds her asleep, and he thinks she's so beautiful. So then he just he rapes her, and then she has two children. She has twins, Sun and Moon. And when one of the babies is searching for breast milk, it accidentally sucks the splinter out of her finger, and then she wakes up. So she has two babies, and then the king comes back, and he's like really happy that he has a family now, I guess. And so they, let's just, and so then they kind of start a family. But like I said, the king was married, and so his wife gets very upset, and so she orders the babies, this is really bad, she orders the babies to be thrown into like a furnace and cooked, and then he has to eat them. But then the cook doesn't do that, and so then the cook makes goat instead. So somehow then the king ends up throwing his wife in the furnace, and she dies, and then he and Talia live happily ever after. So there obviously, even though the Sleeping Beauty that we saw, we might know of is not interesting. They had to do some reimagining. I think Perrault, Charles Perrault, again, 1697, he's the one that introduced the fairies and more of the magical elements and took away, he replaced the married king with a prince and all that. So anyway, as you can see, these are some very interesting tales here. Yes, this is horrifying. I agree, Vicki. This is and right. And Tamara, I love your comment about some of these stories evoking Greek and Roman gods and goddesses or Hindu deities. That's a really, really good point. And I think there has been a lot of cross-cultural mixing of these. So that's a really good point. So we're going to move on from fairy tales. And I wanted instead to kind of show y'all some images from materials from our collection, and feel free to comment or to unmute yourself if you have a comment about it. But I'm going to try to show y'all some other books, other beloved children's books from our collection, and we can talk a little bit about these. So let's see if I can y'all see the full screen of the slideshow? Okay, very, very good. All righty. Okay, so we've got Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens. This is, we have this wonderful text in the Bentley Rare Book Museum, 1906, written by J.M. Barrie and illustrated by Arthur Rackham. So Peter Pan, okay, we're probably all familiar with Peter Pan a little bit. So J.M. Barrie didn't have any children of his own, but he developed a parent-like relationship with a family of three boys that he met while walking in Kensington Gardens, and he used to tell them stories. And one of the stories that he would tell them actually became a novel called The Little White Bird in 1902. And in that story, there's a character, it's an eternally youthful character. And that later became the main character in what we all will come to know as Peter Pan, which was a play in 1904. But Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens was, as you can see here, it says from the Little White Bird. It's based on, so I think in here, this eternally youthful character is like really, I think, a little baby. So kind of, we're all imagining Peter Pan as, older than this. But what's really exciting about about Peter Pan in Kensington Garden is that it has the illustrations are tipped in. So if you look at this picture, you see how it's mounted on this kind of brownish sheet. that's how the illustrations are. So they're not fully adhered to that sheet. There's just a part, just a tip of them are, because a lot of times people, they were so valuable and beautiful, people would often take them out and frame them. Here's some other examples. Beautiful watercolor by Arthur Rackham. So I forgot who was selling it, one of the rare book dealers that I work with. Some of the original watercolors, illustrations that Arthur Rackham did for this novel were recently on sale for $67,000. So they are very, very valuable and collectible. Okay. So now we're going to look at, this is from 1911. This is the Bentley Rare Book Museum's copy of Peter and Wendy. So as you can see right here. So Peter and Wendy, I think that's what the Disney film was based on. And love some of the illustrations in here. Love it. I especially like the one Peter flew in. Love that. So let's see. Ooh, we got someone who has a very nice. We got people having enthusiastic comments. This is great. Yay. Okay, awesome. So I do want to, again, I love story time. So I'm just going to read one little passage from this that I just love it. It says, this is chapter 1, Peter breaks through. All children except one grow up. They soon know that they will grow up. And the way Wendy knew was this. One day she was 2 years old. She was playing in a garden and she plucked another flower and ran with it to her mother. I suppose she must have looked rather delightful, for Mrs. Darling put her hand to her heart and cried, "Oh, why can't you remain like this forever?" This was all that passed between them on the subject, but henceforth Wendy knew that she must grow up. You always know after you are 2. 2 is the beginning of the end. And that's kind of how it starts. That just really hit me because my daughter, well, she's not quite 2, she's 15 months, but I'm like, oh, 2 is the beginning of the end. That's so sad. So I'll think about that when she turns 2. But anyway, I think I've got one more illustration. Let me see. Sorry, computer's freezing a little bit. Okay, there we go. So we got the mermaids on the left, and then we've got Captain Hook on the right. So this is fascinating. It looks, again, I agree, Vicki, visuals are stunning. Lazy Liza Lizard. I don't know if I remember that one. That's exciting. All righty. So Summer Days on the Lagoon. Okay, very good. So I love this one. Okay, so next one we're going to take a look at. Let's see if I can. Okay, here we go. I know we're all probably familiar with Wizard of Oz. So this is the first in the Oz series by L. Frank Baum. So The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was published in 1900. Here at the Bentley Rare Book Museum, we've got a copy from an edition from 1903. So not quite the first, but it's still really early. So yay. Absolutely. Illustrations. These ones are like unforgettable illustrations. Illustrated by W.W. Denslow. This was immensely popular for children when it came out. Bestseller. It was so very, very popular. This 1903 edition has like full plate illustrations and some cuts, so some partial page illustrations, which we'll see in a minute. And so there are 14 Oz books, and they often came out during Christmas. And then, of course, I think we're all familiar with the 1939 MGM film where people were stunned and excited by the colors. That's a great comment from Lindsay about expecting this book to be so thick. And the way that it is, you'll see too, the text is the text is relatively large, and there are illustrations throughout, so that also thickens it a bit. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, so here's part of one of the first pages. And then we've got illustrations like this in there. And Dorothy looks so different than, you know, what we're used to in the film, but I like it. You see the lion, and so love these, love it. Okay, just giving everybody a chance to take a look. All right, and then Winnie the Pooh, and I know that we had, let's see, somebody this is one of their favorite, I had on my list as one of someone's favorite children's books was Winnie the Pooh. So Winnie the Pooh was written by Alan Alexander Milne and illustrated by Ernest Shepard. He was a really popular British playwright in the 1920s, but what really catapulted him to fame was when his son Christopher Robin was born in 1920. Really, the stories and the books that he wrote for him. That's what I think we all know of best. And so the characters have been really reinterpreted and reimagined by Disney and by others. But nonetheless, I think we all kind of, I think Disney made it a little bit more of a teaching type of thing, and they added some things, but proud to say that the Bentley Rare Book Museum does have the first edition, the 1926 Winnie the Pooh, and we also have the 1928 House at Pooh Corner. So let's take a look. This is my favorite part of this first edition. You see it has the map, got the 100-acre wood here. Love it so much. Really like this. Then we got these. Let's see, trying to check the chat. Oh yay, people, okay, great. We're all liking this. I love it. Okay, and then here are some pictures. Let me get this. Sorry, let me see if I can. Okay, I love, this is just so cute to me. So we see Pooh and Christopher Robin, and we see the tree and all these things we're used to. Yes, absolutely. So for y'all, I felt really old for a second. So I know Winnie the Pooh, there was a Disney movie that came out in 2011. And when I saw that, I was like, well, wait a minute, that wasn't the movie that I was used to growing up. I didn't realize that my Winnie the Pooh exposure through film, I don't know about anybody else, but mine, and maybe we can watch a YouTube clip later. Mine was from the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh it's like from 1977. I didn't realize that was the one that I was used to. And then I think there was a Tigger movie in 2000. Oh, Watership Down. Lori, can you talk a little bit about that one?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so if it's the one I'm thinking, you know, because there were two that came out about the same time. There was Watership Down, Richard Adams' Watership Down, and there was also The Secret of NIMH, which was a little later and a little more, I think, generalized for children's viewing. But Watership Down was there is a scene in that film that burned itself into my brain, and I've never really gotten over it. And that is where the rabbits, the hares, are trying to escape the warren, and their exits are blocked, and they basically, and somebody tell me if I am misremembering this and I'm thinking of a different movie, but they end up suffocating as they're trying to get out of the warren. So am I misassociating?
No, that's how it went.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that 5 seconds of imagery has just stayed with me forever. And I actually have a couple of first editions. Richard Adams is a wonderful author and very collectible. So I've got like Shardik and the Watership Down, and he did a non-animal story called Maia, which is actually quite a good read if anybody's, it's a big book, but he wrote a lot of big books. But I recommend him for anybody that has not read him yet. He's very enjoyable.
Thank you.
I do have to, I want to add that, yeah, they had closed off the entrances to the Baron, to the Warren, sorry. And they were pumping gas in there to kill the rabbits. And that's why they were suffocating, because they couldn't get out, and there was gas being pumped in by the construction people. And one thing that I've read Watership Down, I've watched the movie, and I've listened to the audiobook. And if you ever get a chance to listen to the audiobook, that's the best way I felt I got the story. I mean, I like the audiobook the best.
Interesting. Thank y'all so much. I wasn't as familiar. One thing that I kind of ascertained just from research, I think a lot of people even like have tried to make things like Winnie the Pooh, these animal stories like into more than what they are. I don't know if Milne necessarily meant that for this story, but it's later become that. So it's kind of interesting, especially I think a story that involves like animal personalities and kind of like how that, I feel that affects us differently. I don't know. I feel like those kind of stories they just make you feel different things. So yeah, really, really interesting.
I do have to share real quick, kind of in a similar vein. Supposedly, The Wizard of Oz is about William Jennings Bryan, who ran for president. And people have read into massively about how it's all about him and that election and what he was going to do. But I was just say it's just a children's book. It doesn't have to be political. It's kind of a similar thing that some people read very heavily into that and others don't.
Absolutely. And I guess that's what keeps it relevant and interesting and alive, the fact that we can have these discussions and it can inspire other things and whatnot. But that's interesting. That's a really funny one. Okay, so let's see. I'm just trying to catch all the awesome things in the chat. Yeah, I think you're right. I know Maddie said something about the animals having feelings, and that just does something to us. It impacts you differently when you're reading or watching that. Okay, and I've got the Jungle Book here too. Bentley Rare Book Museum. This is our 1894 edition of the Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. So Kipling was born in India, and his father was a craftsman. And Tamara, you'll appreciate this. His father was a follower of William Morris and the arts and crafts movement. I didn't realize that. So there's a connection there, which is cool. But Kipling lived in India for his first 6 years of his life. And, I think kind of rambunctious child. And then he was sent to England to learn proper manners. But the problem was he was sent to a family that, he didn't know, and it kind of traumatized him. So he fell sick, and then his mom finally, came and they kind of took him back. So I think that was not good for him. But even though he never lived in India again, it continued to, inspire his writing. And so that's kind of what we see reflected in the Jungle Book. Oh, and Tamara loves this one. Very good. Again, let's see, I have got some, here's some illustrations from our edition that are lovely. One thing that I found was that Kipling, who wrote the Jungle Book, and J.M. Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan, those two, they were, of a similar time period. and relatively similar, late Victorian. And so those two were often, I should say, I guess, maybe compared, because they dealt with this idea of boyishness and boyhood. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. So the latest Jungle Book film was released just 4 years ago, by Disney, in 2016. Then there was a 1994 live action. But the one that I remember as a kid were watching, I don't know, I guess I had a VHS tape of it, was the 1967, the animated one. That's, I think, the one that I probably know of the best. I remember other ones coming out. But anyway, yeah. So I think those are all of the images I have. So I really hope y'all enjoyed seeing a little bit from these materials in our collection. It's so much fun, and I think it's one of those things that everybody can really relate to. So that's really, really fun. Does anyone have any? We've had like an incredible. I love checking this chat. Does anyone have any comments or anything that they want to kind of bring up to the group? I want to make sure everyone has a chance to talk if they want to, or bring up a point of conversation.
This might be poking the bear a bit, but do you have anything to say about Kailyn Kane?
Oh my gosh. Andrew likes to poke at me, likes to bring up difficult times for me.
Andrew says this might be poking the bear, like he didn't know it was.
So we must discuss it. It's a hard topic, but since we're talking about children's books anyway, while I love all the things we talked about, something that people may you'll find out about me, I was a Nancy Drew girl through and through. Loved Nancy Drew. My mom used to always, I would always read them when I would finish my tests at school, when I would just take out my Nancy Drew and whatnot. So we have we have a beautiful Nancy Drew in our collection, and thanks to Nancy, who is right here on the call. Thank you, Nancy. Nancy donated so many volumes of Nancy Drews that we are in love with, and we've got them all. They're all downstairs now. But when we were doing a program about Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, Mr. Williams made the very casual comment about Kailyn Kane not being a person. The author not being a person. And I was like, and this is me, I'm hosting this session, this in-person session that I'm hosting, by the way. And I look at him in horror, and he was like, and we were not on the same page. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, Joellen, just think about, Nancy Drews are still being published. Think about how old Kailyn Kane would be. And I was like, I literally was about to cry, because I had always felt like Kailyn Kane was like my soulmate, as literary soulmate, and she understood me and she knew me. And to find out this was just part of it was part of the Stratemeyer Syndicate, a big publishing empire that had a variety of people writing these books. It wasn't just one person, even though I felt attached to her. So sad. It's just absolutely, so yes, Andrew and Daniel are never going to forget that, because they were there when it happened, when I had my moment of sadness. So, and I think that's one of the things about children's stories, that attachment that we have to them, it never really goes away. For those of y'all, I know we talked a lot about the books, but for the movies, so out of these movies that we might have touched on, Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Peter Pan, Wizard of Oz, Winnie the Pooh, The Jungle Book. I know Tamara really likes The Jungle Book. Anyone was there a movie that y'all liked the best out of all those? Any type of movie adaptation that y'all really liked? So Adina said Charlotte's Web, and then we've got Winnie the Pooh. Very, very nice. For Maddie. I'm trying to think. I don't even know what mine would be, let's see. Oh, you can talk about movies in general, honestly. Any type of children's story that became a movie. The Velveteen Rabbit. I don't know as much about that. If anyone knows, please feel free. Oh yes, and Little Women in the Secret Garden. Oh, love those. Love those. I like the 1940s Little Women. That's my favorite. But the Grinch. Not even on Christmas. I love that. I love it. Yes, Beatrix Potter. Absolutely. Yeah, there's some really, really good ones out there. Anne of Green Gables. I loved Anne of Green Gables. I wanted to be her because I always felt I was in love with her vocabulary. I wanted to be just like that when I was young. I know that they got annoyed at her, but I loved it. Oh, the Peanuts holiday movies. Nothing can beat that. Those are so great. Those are holiday musts, especially as we're approaching the holidays and probably going to have to be home, need to be home. So we're going to just be watching movies. I love it. Great. Benji. Yeah. The Netflix Anne of Green Gables. I didn't see that one. I'm going to have to check that out. Very, very good. Oh, Jumanji. Okay, wait a minute. Jumanji. Wait a minute. When I saw that, maybe I wasn't mature enough to see that. I couldn't sleep. I was terrified of Jumanji. Isn't the one that's more recent, isn't it like, maybe it's less scary than the one with Robin Williams? That one was so scary to me. The new one. Okay, I need to see the new ones. Maybe that's my, I'm gonna check out the new Jumanjis. Oh my gosh, we got so many awesome things coming in. So y'all continue that discussion. What I'm gonna do now is I am going to do our raffle because we've got, again, just to make our KSU students who are attending feel welcome, we've got a couple prizes if it's for their KSU students for their first time attending. So if you registered, I have your name in this little, my little box here. And so I'm going to open it up. So this first one, there are two things. We're first going to do the raffle for the Starbucks gift card and then for the mug. So if the person's not here, we'll just keep going. Okay. So, with my eyes. Is Christina on? Christina Contreras? I think I see Christina. Yay, Christina is here. So Christina, you won a Starbucks gift card on us, okay? All right, so next it's for the mug. And I spent way too much time in the KSU bookstore picking out a mug. The person actually came up to me and asked if I needed some extra help. I was like, no, I just want to pick the perfect mug. So this mug was selected with care. Okay, Lindsay Johnson. Okay, I think Lindsay is on. Okay, great. So Lindsay, you won. Yay, your mug. Okay, so I'll follow up with y'all via email so I can figure out, so we can figure out how to get it to you. I can either send it to you or we can meet on campus. Either way, if you're not on campus, we'll just send it. Yay, okay, well, that hour went by. It is 10:49. Our 50 minutes at least went by. So thank y'all so much for coming. This has been so much fun. It's something we can all relate to. What a great topic. And it was just a delight getting to meet so many new people. I hope y'all had fun. Hope y'all had some great conversation. And please continue. And just let me know, for those of you if it's your first time, if you want to continue to meet with us or at least get the links, please let me know and I'll keep you on the listserv. But I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I hope that this program has just transported you back to childhood a little bit. And anyway, I hope everyone just has a great rest of the week and hopefully we will see you next time. All righty. Take care, everybody. Thank you. And thank you for all the wonderful chats, conversation. This is great. Okay. Bye, everybody.